welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann. You can call me H.
And I'm Ryan Quintal. You can call me Q.
This is being released on December 12th. Oh, gosh, we're almost to Christmas already. And let me tell you, I'm feeling it. December is so busy. And actually, the two of us have been really busy. We've been trying to cram more shows in before the vacation and everything. And so actually, we've been so busy, we had to record this one a couple of days past the release date. So we're recording on the 14th, but I'm going to get it edited up quickly and then we'll go back and release it on the 12th just to make sure that we don't miss a week.
We're developing, because it's convenient to us, the very first podcast time travel technology.
Yeah, and let me tell you, the last couple of days have been amazing. You know, I've got a big promotion at work. The impeachment went through and just everything's really looking up.
What we found out, H, is that plebes have been making vision boards. We jump straight to the end result of that vision and then just retroactively
kind
make
of reverse
it happen.
Engineer it from there. Yeah,
exactly. We're like, well, this is the end result. Let's now we can figure out how we got there.
Of course, congratulations on your MacArthur Fellowship. That's wonderful to hear. I hope that releasing this podcast isn't going to have some sort of crazy butterfly effect. And you know what? We're not that important. I don't think this is really going to change anything.
No, and you know what? I am, after having accepted this fellowship, I am very excited to learn what a MacArthur Fellowship is and what it's all about.
That's like a genius grant, presumably for the work that we do here on the show.
It might be today.
I guess we'll figure that out. I guess that's a little spoiler for whose idea is better of the two of us today.
It's true.
I'll go ahead and pitch first. Save the best for last, apparently.
Perfect.
My pitch, as all good pitches are, is based on a Nicolas Cage movie.
Oh, God. We're earning it this week.
Have you ever seen the film Next?
I've never seen the film Next, no.
That's right, you're not missing much. Nicolas Cage plays, it's kind of like a superhero movie.
Okay.
Where he can see like 2 days into the future.
Okay.
And that means that as long as he can see into the future, he can change the future. Maybe it's not 2 days. Maybe it's like 2 minutes or 2 hours or something like that. But actually, I think it is 2 minutes. Now that I think about it, that makes a big difference, doesn't it?
It's not like us. It's not our 2-day technology. He's working on the 2-minute spectrum.
Yeah, that's right. We're the ones 2 days in the future. I always get us mixed up with Nicolas Cage for some reason. Must
Classic.
Be the hair.
Yes.
He can see 2 minutes into the future, which means that he can see pretty much every possible way that the next 2 minutes could go down based on his decisions, because if you can see the future, you can change the future. The entire thing is about they're trying to find some terrorist organization who's going to like detonate a bomb in the middle of LA or something like that. They've kind of narrowed it down to this warehouse, but they don't know where in the warehouse it is, and so they're trying to find this bomb or the terrorist or whatever. And Cage says, leave it to me, I'll search the entire thing. And you see this really cool scene of Nicolas Cage in these branching timelines, essentially kind of splitting out from himself searching every like little nook and cranny, because in some possible future reality in the next 2 minutes, that exact spot is where he's going to be searching. So, he has all of these cages going everywhere trying to find this bomb. And so that kind of got me thinking, I've been really enjoying Super Hot lately, the first-person shooter where time only moves if you move. And so as long as you stay still, time is relatively frozen in place. I've been playing the VR version, which is even more difficult to manage because it tracks your head movement and your hand movement and everything like that. But, right. And so I was thinking of like a cross between Super Hot and Braid, which is a first-person shooter, but you can rewind time. And so I was thinking you have a very kind of a realistic damage pool. I don't know, hit points. What do they call when somebody dies in real life? Mortality?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah, so basically if you get shot, pretty much you're going to die. And so your whole thing is just, you don't want to get shot. And so if you find yourself in a bad situation, you can rewind time to kind of matrix around the bullets or find yourself in unexpected locations. But like Braid, if you rewind time past, something that you've done, if you shot one of the bad guys and you rewind past that point, obviously the bad guy isn't dead anymore. So you have to find some way to kind of string together this perfect run, but you have a little bit of flexibility in that you're able to rewind. So let us start the clock on that one and see where the time takes us.
This is really cool. I want to say Super Hot's main mechanic is that as long as you're not moving, no one else is, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like a perpetually paused state of the game unless you're doing something.
Right.
I really love the rewindability in Forza. I can't tell you how many times I have taken a Ferrari into a 90-degree turn at 100 miles an hour only to rewind and go, oh, I guess I needed to brake way back there. So I love that being applied to a first-person shooter.
I'd like it if it was a little bit more analog as well. Like if it wasn't press a button and it rewinds, like it decides how long it's going to rewind for. Like sometimes in Forza, all I really needed was a little bit more of a push to the right and I would have been fine. And I don't want to have to go back like, half the roundabout.
Yeah, it sends you too far. Right?
Yeah.
You almost need a Tacoma style like rewind in that.
I haven't played it yet, so I'll have to take your word for that.
Yeah, they give you essentially 1-for-1 audio tape controls. So you have your step back and you can, one of my favorite parts about any sort of rewinding function is the attempted simulation at backward sound effects.
Yeah.
And so what if you add some mechanic into this thing that there are certain puzzles or enemies like you kind of get in some of these games that can only be defeated somehow backwards?
That would be interesting. And again, I've used this reference point in the past, so I won't go into as much detail this time around. But in Cameo Elements of Power, if you racked up a score multiplier, you can go into slow motion, or I guess you would be going in fast motion and everything around you would just look like it's really slow, like in those, like the Flash movies or Quicksilver or whatever. You would come across these enemies that match your speed at that speed. And so the idea is that they're always there, but they're always just moving too fast to be seen. And so that's the only time that you can engage in that space. If this starts off kind of like a regular James Bond or John Wick type shooter at the beginning, and then like halfway through it introduces some sort of like supernatural element, and all of a sudden there's these kind of creatures that you can shoot in the rewind as well.
Yeah, and have you ever played Quantum Break?
You know what? I've got it installed on my Xbox right now, and I'm going to get to it as soon as I get through the 80 other games in the way.
Fair enough. So Quantum Break, which I actually recently just re-downloaded because I caved and paid Comcast for my data cap to be lifted, which don't even get me started on that, but has a really interesting mechanic where certain enemies will be wearing a special device that kind of makes them able to exist on your plane. So, and of course you can shoot and damage that device and kind of kick them out of that world. So I love the idea of some of these bad guys potentially wearing these harnesses or straps that allow them to maybe continue chasing you as you rewind. And that's like these particular moments where, oh, if I rewind too far, this guy's actually going to catch up to me still. So you're incentivized to take out that bad guy first straight out of your rewind. So you add in some pressure situations and it doesn't just feel like a trial and error.
Yeah, that's really interesting. One thing that I wanted to bring up as I was describing this, I got this like sudden dawning on me is like, oh, this actually sounds really familiar. I looked it up, and there was a game on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, presumably, kind of early last gen, called Time Shift, that is a first-person shooter that had some time manipulation elements. And I know you could pause time. I'm pretty sure you could probably rewind and fast forward as well. But we wanted to put out there that I do remember this. This was not intentional that I would be evoking this, but it's on the table. And I feel like with this last edition, we've already kind of moved in a different direction than that one anyways. So I didn't want to just not say anything about Time Shift. The idea of things moving backwards in time, maybe because guns wouldn't work if you are yourself going backwards in time, because, pulling the trigger, like you can only kind of suck back into your gun the bullets that already exist. And so maybe you have two guns. One of them kind of shoots bullets and one of them sucks things from the atmosphere.
Okay.
Like chunks from the wall, or just like some sort of like a gravity gun almost, like has some sort of like powerful attractive force.
Sure.
And so that one in reverse could function as a real gun, but it could also do some, environmental damage in the forward facing world, or and then there would have to be some sort of a function for the real guns in the backwards world, just to kind of give you some mixed utility for these tools.
I like any time a first-person shooter or any game uses the environment to refill your weapon. For example, in infamous Second Son, I think, whatever the PS4 launch game was, you have that concrete power.
Yeah.
And you can kind of suck up chunks of road to kind of refill that ability. And having a gun do that with shrapnel. But I also wanted to, I'm glad that this is such a good idea. It just makes me think of 1,000 other things. And I almost want to help introduce like the concept of when you're playing a golf game or a sports game, sometimes you can put like aftertouch on the ball. And so I would love if somehow, let's say the game is pretty difficult, right? Linearly, because you're able to rewind, so you can retry a lot of things. What if you could kind of put a little aftertouch on yourself through that rewind, very slightly change your position, and maybe that puts you at risk of getting one of your own bullets sucked back into a direction that hits you or something.
Oh, interesting.
Or, it puts you in the line of sight of another enemy, but maybe it's enough to get right under that cover that you just weren't quite at before, or around a corner, but very light, almost to the way that you control a car in Burnout, just like almost cosmetic level of this player control during the rewind.
It's like that kind of iconic bit of Braid where you're dropping down this big pit, and then there's the spikes at the bottom, then the little platform with spikes on it. And so you do this like weird combination of rewinding a little bit and just nudging yourself in different directions, and you're able to snake your way down this pit. It's really clever. I like that. But I really like what you were saying about using the environment to reload your gun. And maybe we can bake both of those functions into one gun. You always have these two competing, there's always people in what do we call it? Front motion, regular forward-facing time.
Linear and, start to finish.
And reverse. And so you've got both threats going on. And so neither one is like a safe space to be. But you can only shoot your gun in the forward motion, and once you reload, it basically just sucks things from where you're pointing your gun, whether that's pulling in concrete or bits of entrail or whatever it is. And so you can use that in slow motion, or in reverse, as your primary fire function, but that is reloading your gun to be shot again in the kind of front facing motion.
Oh, that's cool. So if you have a gun, perhaps that most of its ammo is spawned from these reverse enemies or reverse resources in some way, you find yourself using the reverse as a reload.
Yeah.
But also potentially that's resetting a little bit of your progress, kind of a 2-step forward, 1-step back kind of.
Yeah, or you could reload just in regular forward time as well, just by pointing it at something and then sucking up rocks or something to be shot into the next group of enemies. But it serves that function in reverse as well. But that also means that if you have a full clip, if you're one of those people that just instinctively reloads after every, little bout of fire like I am, then if you have a full clip and you go into reverse motion, then you can't fire because you don't need any more environmental objects in your gun. So you have to kind of manage that.
Yeah, I actually do the same thing. And the thought of a reload being reversed on me is pretty horrible. I wonder so few games copy the Gears of War active reload system, which I think is one of the only games that ever made reloading its own, game in and of itself. If you can layer something like that in there too, where timing a reload perfectly and potentially the ability to rewind and get a second shot at that reload is pretty cool. Or maybe even reloading in some way fuels your rewind ability.
Yeah. Anyways, we're out of time on that. Let's see. I'm going to call this one E.S. Rever. That can be the name of the person, and it's also reverse spelled backwards. So
Nice.
Whatever. Sounds more like one of the great American authors, but I'm sure that it'll work out. All that talk about reloading got me thinking, do you remember when games this used to be just like the way of the land. When you hit the reload button, if you still had bullets in your clip,
It would get rid of them.
yeah, you would lose those ones, kind of like you were throwing away a half full clip.
It was madness.
I mean, that's a good kind of risk reward as well, because you don't want to run out, but then you don't also want to be short a couple bullets if you need them for your next firefight. So I wonder why we did away with that mechanic, because that one, I guess, just to cater to us more obsessive compulsive types.
You know, you say that, and it's actually even taken one step further. When I played Destiny 2, if you are out of bullets, that character is automatically going to reload no matter what. And if you, for example, are even low on a clip, I think after coming out of a sprint, your character compulsively reloads as well.
Interesting.
So it's doing the compulsive reloading for you.
In Mass Effect 1, they had this really clever system where basically you had unlimited ammo with every gun, because the way that the Mass Effect guns worked was that they had just like a chunk of metal just lodged in the gun, and the gun would kind of shave off like an almost infinitesimally small piece of the metal and then launch it using the kind of, the whatever kind of warp drive technology powered those space stations that enabled light speed travel, but just like a handheld version for the gun. And it would just shoot these little shards of metal. And I always thought, like, that's such a clever mechanic, like such a clever, like futuristic way to build a gun that doesn't ever need to be reloaded. But then for Mass Effect 2 and 3, I guess they forgot that technology. And they went back to having guns that you had to like reload or cool off or whatever. It just felt like a big step backwards. But I guess if you're making it into a shooter, reloading is a part of the rhythm of the game. So I understand that you can't just give everyone unlimited ammo, but I thought it was cool.
Yeah, agreed.
Let's find out what idea you're going to be getting grant money for this week. What is it you're bringing us?
Well, this is probably the closest to a genius grant I'll ever get. If this is not a show about contrast, I don't know what is. My pitch.
Wait a minute, what's
week,
that supposed to mean?
I mean, you came in with a frantic reversey shooter. I'm going to come at you with something very different. If
this isn't a show about contrast, I don't know what is. I've got something really brilliant.
Really brilliant. Forget about that trash game. All right, so H. In the future, the wealthy and powerful live in the clouds. I know you're thinking BioShock Infinite. Stay with me.
Okay.
They all live in personal, like, house airships, and they punish their society's outcasts, the criminals, the sick, the poor, to a post-apocalyptic Earth to mine and gather their food and resources for them. There are only 2 cities left in the continental United States: Boston and San Francisco.
Oh, I see.
And the
Wherever
rest...
you are, you're home.
Exactly. And the rest of the continent is abandoned, it's overgrown, it's in really tough shape.
Yeah,
but
good riddance.
a massive train line connects these two, okay? And the train is operated by the worst of the worst outcasts. They're all, like, punished to go work on the train. So somehow in the setup of the game, you're convicted of a crime. You're cast out of the sky to go work on this hell train. And the game is 2 parts. It's a narrative mystery, maybe a la a David Cage-esque game, as you're on the train and you're working it and you're learning the stories of the people and the powers that be. And then there are various points throughout the adventure where it becomes a survival game where the train breaks down and the staff has to go out and gather resources and fend off any possible attackers to help repair the train and continue the journey. So you travel this adventure takes weeks, months, however long. You gather resources, you repair the train, you battles maybe potentially strange beasts, and slowly throughout the journey you uncover the mystery of what happened to Earth, and try and liberate the people from the land from their sky overlords.
Get right on track and start the clock. This is interesting. That was not where I was expecting you to go with this.
No.
Because what I had in my mind when you started describing it is like, oh, this like Snowpiercer. And I can see so many ways that kind of constantly being on a super fast moving train could be really cool. And, you know, thinking about the physics of like, you know, if the train is moving so fast, then what is it like to, I don't know, like fire a gun on a moving train or something like that? I guess it would, you know, the same thing as jumping on a moving train. You don't just immediately fly backwards as soon as you leave the ground because you're maintaining that momentum. But anyways, this is also kind of cool where it's like a little Huckleberry Finn journey, maybe, where you're kind of cruising down this pathway, or like a Jason and the Argonauts type thing, where you're having a kind of a wide-ranging journey and are stopping at various places along the way. One of the things that I would really like to see in this game is a perpetually present outdoors as well. And so even as the train is moving, you're able to kind of climb on top like Nathan Drake in the Uncharted games. And there's just kind of the country scrolling past. And, you know, you can create a very narrow stretch of the entire country if you wanted to, because, you know, racing games do it. Like Need for Speed The Run is basically a, you know, almost a straight line through the United States, and it has scenery from all these different places, but it can be pretty sparse because you're not really going to be interacting with most of it. It can be mostly a facade, but just to have this in real time, or even, you know, slightly accelerated scroll through of this kind of moving landscape that gives you a sense of urgency. Like you can watch a lake in the distance get closer and then suddenly go backwards, and now you are canonically past that point. So you've got to accomplish your goals quickly. You know, you've got to do what you have to do because you can't just stand around. The train doesn't wait for anybody. Yeah,
I definitely wanted a sense of anytime you venture out, it should feel like you're taking a substantial risk, right? It's almost like the first time the train breaks down, maybe you don't even participate in it. Maybe you just see other people go out and all just get wiped out from something horrible. And so you're immediately filled with a sense of dread of what happens outside the train. And then, of course, once those people are gone, you're put in charge of something one of those guys did. And now next time it happens, you're one of the people that has to go out.
I always hate those moments, though, in games. And I know it's just, I've played so many games to where I'm just kind of sick of like those non-interactive set pieces. You know, like once you play Uncharted 2 and you have that giant hotel and of crashing down around you and you're scrambling through the hotel to try to find a way to jump to another roof, like an interactive set piece is so cool. And it's hard to go back to those kind of Gears of War moments where you feel like the camera control has been taken away from you and you see a couple guys suddenly kind of have better animation and they're voice acted and talking to each other. And then all of a sudden something breaks out of the ground and pulls them under and they scream and there's a big shower of blood. And it's like, okay, whatever. That's obviously a cutscene moment and it's not something that actually impacts me. You know, I like to find more creative ways around it rather than just watching an animation of something happen to somebody else.
Well, what if we did a sort of horror game trope and the first thing that you experience when you're out with these people, they don't, you know, the current workers, you're the new guy, they don't trust you enough to give you a weapon, right? So you are more powerless in the initial situation, and maybe you could happen your way into a weapon towards the end of the initial encounter, or it's only once you get back to the train is somebody hand you something and you're able to, you know, the first moment should have that kind of barely escaped, and then the next time you're going out, okay, now I'm the one that has to deal with it when something goes wrong.
What if there's one of the stops, something gets onto the train instead of you venturing off, where the space that you've grown so accustomed to, you know, maybe on the train, you have to spend a lot of time kind of, Stardew Valley style, trying to grow some food and just survive on the trip because it's a long trip across the country. And so this is your safe space. This is a space that you know, and something gets onto the train, whether it's like a monster or whether it's a ghost like you would see in PT, and is just kind of menacing these previously safe hallways that you used to roam about in, or like the alien in Alien Isolation, where now you are being hunted in your safe space and try to use the space that you know so well from the rest of the game to your advantage to try to, find other ways to sneak around it.
Yeah, I don't know what the statute of limitations on a multi-year old game is, but in the very first reboot Wolfenstein, I think Wolfenstein The New Order, they pull that off really well, where you, between missions, keep going back to your safe house. And the safe house at one point in the game is attacked, and when you go back to it, it's filled with enemies. And it's also this really empowering moment for the player, because maybe by the time you get to that stop or that breakdown, whatever you want to call it in the game, you might know the layout of this train fairly well. It could be both exercise in scary horror and at the same time maybe even a power fantasy, because it's like, well, you guys aren't going to stop me. I know this better than anyone.
Yeah, it's interesting. The world outside the train, maybe you need to kind of replenish on supplies in towns. That would give you a good excuse to stop the train and get out instead of just the train keeps breaking down every so often. Maybe you can do some like tune-up and repairs along the way. Maybe the train does kind of break down at unspecified points along the trail as well, and you have to repair it in real time while creatures surround you and attack the train or whatever. But anyways, these main stops, these kind of scripted encounters, maybe if they happen at towns or cities like you would run into in America today, where they would really be in that route in between the coasts. So you're kind of exploring this ruined kind of Fallout world to try to salvage supplies and get back to your train before night falls or whatever.
I mean, that's really cool, and I think that those stops could be interesting ways to introduce new key characters and end up playing a role later, and maybe even people who... This kind of always happens in most adventure, especially sci-fi TV shows have the trope of like the mysterious passenger who ends up being a serious problem for one reason or another.
Yeah.
You're a better writer than me, H.
Okay.
So I wanted to hear maybe what you would think, because I left it blank. What could be the mystery that this person on the ground discovers about the people in the sky?
So the obvious answer is if they're the kind of higher up society and you're the one that's cast out, then you can discover that maybe they aren't as, pure and innocent as they thought they were, which is all, fine and dandy. But I think the kind of metaphorical allusion to being cast out of the city in the sky gives me a strong, like, Paradise Lost feel.
That's what I was going for, yeah.
Like Lucifer being cast out of heaven and sent to the hell that is Earth now. And so, I gotta brush up on my Milton, is it? Oh boy. And really kind of figure out a clever way to kind of tie those narratives together. But yeah, having that kind of classical Judeo-Christian mythology in there would be cool.
I totally agree with you. And I was thinking maybe that there is something to find. I think that like the game could do a great job of talking about even just some of the modern prejudices that exist in the world now and make some sort of commentary on that stuff, whether something that obviously is palatable, but I definitely see this storytelling vessel as a way to tackle something perhaps a little uncomfortable to talk about in the same way that the new Wolfenstein does. So I mean,
obviously the most obvious metaphor there is things that are saved in the clouds versus things on the hard drive, because you are driving a very hard route through the nation. So, the inequality between file sharing structures is, it's just not safe on the hard drive.
It's perfect. That sounds great. We'll get some Teslas in biodefense mode as well.
That's all the time we have for that one. Do you have a name for this game?
Well, as always, you tapped right into what I was thinking, and I was going to call this Far From Heaven.
Okay. We are moving now to our community. We have a very interesting community contribution. Not sure how this is going to translate to radio, but we'll see what we can do. This comes from Spencer Saunders at Telepri on Twitter, who tweeted us, which is one of the ways you can get in contact with us. That is at PlaywrightCast. That is spelled exactly like it appears on the screen you're listening to this from. That is PLAYWRITECAST. So, not like the word playwright. It is a pun. Because we play and we write here. That's what we do. Anyways, Spencer says, a third-person rhythm action game featuring this protagonist. And he featured a drawing, which I obviously can't show you people, unfortunately. Right. But it's, let me see if I can describe it. It is a very tall and lanky looking, kind of a man-shaped character with a rectangular head, almost like a pencil eraser. It has a couple of triangles, kind of where his face should be. No arms, but he is wearing a kind of cool rapper chain. And he seems to be jostling. He's got a few little wiggle lines. His name there is Wigglin Joe. So,
I was going to say affectionately titled Wigglin Joe.
Yeah, so let's get into a third-person rhythm action game featuring this protagonist. What do we make of this?
So I'm looking at Wigglin Joe, and we'll do, as we kind of talk through it, I'll do my best to describe Wigglin Joe further if he needs any additional adjectives. But I look at Wigglin Joe, and he's tall, and he's thin, and he's moving from head to toe, but he's also black and white. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if we could get, Wigglin Joe to maybe be a physics kind of character who is...
That's the thing, the Wigglin that he's doing there makes me think a lot of, like, it's just kind of on the brink of becoming a popular design aesthetic, but it's not quite there yet, of jelly-ish materials.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? There's a game called The Floor is Jelly, where you bounce on these very kind of satisfyingly jello-like stages, and just kind of bounce all over the place. And there's a few more Dead or Alive games. That's probably not a good example. But there's a lot of games where everything's just very like loosey-goosey, jiggly, and fun like that. And so that is interesting because a rhythm game has to be very precise on the beats.
Yeah.
But Wigglin Joe seems like a very loosey-goosey, he's not gonna sway to anyone's beat but his own. So maybe it's a thing about, if you wiggle something back and forth like a slinky or something like that, like it forms its own rhythm.
Develops a rhythm. Yeah. It almost looks like a sound wave or something. He kind of almost appears, from first glance, if he didn't have such a defined chain and shirt, he looks like one of those wacky inflatable arm
there we go.
tube guys.
Yeah.
So those guys do have kind of, where when the air fills them, this kind of puff rhythm about them. Have you heard of this? This has been going around the IGN office lately. Drop Mix.
Yeah.
So I guess Harmonix made a kind of board game that you link to an iPad and you put cards on these pads and it combines different songs. It's really wild. One of the things I could see Wigglin Joe do potentially is dance on maybe different floors or surfaces or bounce into and touch different things that kind of create different mixes of music and tones.
What if he is, this is like an auto runner, like a Super Mario Run or a Rayman, what is that one? Rayman Jungle Beat, something like that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, or Fiesta Run. And so it's got a side-scrolling auto runner where you, kind of like the game Quap, you are using the left and right keys or maybe tapping on the sides of your cell phones to move his feet. And so you can give a long press for a really heavy like foot stomp, or you can give a short press for a little tiny foot movement. And what you're trying to do is basically every step you take, his head kind of wobbles back and forth, or his whole body, and you're trying to find the rhythm that goes with the music that's playing at that time. And everything else in the environment is kind of dancing along with the rhythm, kind of like in New Super Mario Bros. So you can visually see the rhythm as well. And you're just trying to, like a metronome, match that rhythm, him swaying back and forth, by adjusting the size of the steps that you're taking and the timing of the steps. But it's not just all a straight line. Like sometimes you're going downhill, sometimes you have to jump to platforms, sometimes you're walking through the city and there's a jackhammer next to you, so that's kind of throwing off your rhythm as that's kind of jiggling you all around. But it's all about, the world kind of comes into focus, like you're restoring color to the world or something as you're wiggling.
I even like if you shifted where the the wiggle is happening, and instead of controlling feet, you're actually just, he's like a piece of gum, like a gummy thing. And every time you kind of push on the left or right side of your screen, his hip region sways left to right. And there are like obstacles and stuff that he is dodging with his hips to the beat. And, but almost like Flappy Bird or something, if you let off, one side or another, there's a little bit of backswing to his hips, right? Because he's naturally kind of a wiggly jiggly dude, and you have to make sure that if you hold it too long in one direction and stretch him out too far, that if he snaps back in the other direction, he might hit another object.
I always like, and this could be a game that kind of shifts perspective sometimes. Sometimes it's side-scrolling, sometimes it's behind you, like Temple Run. But I always like the game Jetpack Joyride, because I think that the Tiny Brick developers, I think they're the ones that made that, do a really excellent job of all of the vehicle pickups that you have are really clever, like alternate control schemes that take like a moment to figure out, but then once you get it, it's like, wow, this feels just as intuitive as everything else in this game. Like I really like just swapping between these multiple control styles. One of them is a jet ski that you're cruising along the surface of the water, but you're trying to dodge all of these missiles and laser grids and stuff like that. And so you can choose to submerge yourself underwater, but as soon as you let go of the screen, he kind of rockets back up and shoots himself into the air. And so you've got that kind of push and pull there. So it's just something kind of similar to that. Like you can try to hold to one side to dodge something that's coming at your midsection, but if you hold it for too long, you're going to snap back in the opposite direction.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love the idea too of having him, trying to move to the rhythm of something, or maybe depending on the beats of the song, having a natural wiggle himself and seeing how that in real time affects the controls that you need to use.
Yeah, I like his bounciness being kind of an unpredictable part of almost like a little sloppiness to the controls. It just gives it like a real unique personality, and of like a Octodad. I just love how difficult that is to precisely control, but that is baked into the game, so that's like part of the point.
We have to figure out some mechanic for Wigglin Joe's chain. I almost want it to be, and I don't know how to describe what's at the end of the chain other than it looks like two triangles that are on his face. So maybe Wigglin Joe is wearing a chain with a embossed version of his head on it, which I'm very into. I almost want it to be like a journey scarf, where like the better you're doing in the game, the longer the chain is getting. And that's just, flopping around with you. That's kind of like an indication of how awesome you are. Maybe you could like drown yourself in the Wigglin Joe chain.
As you do better, then you start going faster, and it kind of like flies behind you like the scarf in Hyrule Warriors.
Oh, perfect.
Wigglin Joe finds his way into Smash Bros. Eventually.
He's not going to have any moves, though. He'd only have a stomp, really.
Yeah, we wiggle with the best of them, though.
One of the things we haven't talked about, and maybe it's not worth talking about, but I think it might be, Wigglin Joe has no arms.
That's true.
So,
well, yeah, but the movement schemes that we've created are all very leg-based anyways, and so he's got exactly what he needs to keep the beat.
He's not worried about it.
I think it'd be fun to put him on a steel girder at some point in his journey, and the steel girder is kind of being suspended in the middle, but it's kind of rocking back and forth, and so you're trying to balance on this thing and keep the beat as well. That'd be difficult, but that'd be fun.
Yeah, I love in Mario Odyssey, the iron planks in New Donk City that kind of sway left to right. So if you had to, as Wigglin Joe, had to kind of sway to match where the plank or the platform is taking you in that moment, and maybe like hold it on particular beats or for measures and stuff, that's kind of cool too.
Yeah. Well, we are out of time for that one. Spencer doesn't come with a name for that one, but I like the name Wigglin Joe so much that has to be in the title. Maybe like Wigglin Joe, Joe Wiggles again.
Let's do it.
Okay. Well, That is Spencer Saunders, Wigglin' Joe. Joe wiggles again. And maybe he'll wiggle again someday. We'll see. Maybe we can think of something else to do with him sometime if we're ever low on community pitches.
I was going to say Wigglin' Joe is going to be in all my pitches from now on.
Oh, I didn't mention that my first-person shooter stars Wigglin' Joe.
and Wigglin' Joe is cast off into my train ride from hell.
Yep. Joe in 60 seconds. All right, well, that is our show for today.
That's our show for 2 days ago.
Yes, that's right. Good catch. We will catch you on the other side. Have fun with the next 2 days. Going to be an unprecedented time in human history as long as things go the same way that they did this first time around, which I can't see any of that going wrong.
Well, our music, as always, is brought to us by our good friend, PROTODOME, who was nice enough to lend his track, Hello World, from his album Blue Noise as our theme song. It's really good, and you can get it off of his Bandcamp. I downloaded the whole album recently, H, and it's very good, start to finish.
You can get in contact with us. You can throw us your own pitch, just like Spencer did today, at playwrightcast.com, or you can email us, playwrightcast@gmail.com. We are currently running very low on pitches, and so if you have any ideas kind of niggling around in the back of your mind, or just anything that you've had in a dream someday, or just, some little idea you had as a kid that you'd not been able to shake, and you just like somebody to chat about it and try to deconstruct it and see where they can take it, then please do send it in. Like, we're just having fun here, and we'd love to work with your idea. So there's no idea too elaborate. There's no idea too minimal. As we saw today, we just got a picture, essentially. And so, yeah, we will make a fun conversation from anything you send us. So please do. We're getting a little low, and we would love to see some more for the holiday season.
Yeah, thank you to Spencer, who wrote in via Twitter, which actually is our first Twitter submission, right? I forgot you could do that. And we were taking them before when Twitter was 120 characters. So this 280 or whatever they're doing now, you got all the characters in the world to pitch a video game.
Yeah, definitely. You don't need any more than that.
No, our pitches rarely exceed that.
I mean, what's the best game? Like Tetris? Like, so get some blocks, rotate them, stick them together, they disappear. Okay, done.
Get some dang squares and start flipping them around.
Flipping squares.
So easy.
Okay, well, I'm going to take us out with a final idea today. My last idea is going to be a fighting game that is a sword-based combat game, but you can choose the size of your sword. The bigger the sword, the harder you hit. But if it's too big, then it's going to be pretty heavy and you're not going to be able to swing it pretty fast. And if your opponent chooses a lighter sword, they might get the first stab there.
Just rotate your dang sword.
Just rotate your dang sword. See you next week.
Bye.